right, now we will go ahead and have the forum for the candidates for State Senate, District 36. Before we move to the legislative forums, Mr. Gene Martinez of ARC would like to say a few words.
Thank you very much. The ARC Greater Twin Cities is driven to ensure opportunities for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and their families to achieve full and satisfying lives. And we promote and protect human rights and actively promote the full inclusion of people with disabilities in the community. We're also very involved in encouraging our members to be involved in civic engagement and voter registration and forums like tonight. So thank you so much. If you have a child with a disability or have any questions, I do have some brochures, and I'm sitting in the front there. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Okay. Now we, again, will have the forum for the candidates for State Senate. The candidates are John Hoffman and Jeffrey Lund. And we will start with the 3 introductory questions. Question 1 is, describe your background and community involvement with a 1-minute response, and we'll have Jeffrey Lund answer first.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Lundy, and I'm a candidate for State Senate. My family involvement, I'm a proud parent of 2 sons, both involved with Rebels Youth Lacrosse, both students at Anoka Hennepin at Champlin Brooklyn Park Academy and Jackson Middle School. Been proud to be a member of multiple commissions in this district. Most currently serving as mayor for the 2nd term of Brooklyn Park. Have served on statewide task force on transportation, including the Transportation Advisory Board for Met Council. Also served as a volunteer football coach for Jackson Middle School, and been very active in different youth programming in this area. I will bring a different viewpoint than what is considered standard because I believe in getting stuff done. And in that regards, we're going to talk tonight about how our visions are for what we want to do, and that's going to be my focus as we start to answer your questions. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. All right, John Hoffman, describe your background and community involvement.
Thank you, and thank you to the League and ARC Greater Twin Cities for hosting this event, and Champlin. Welcome to Champlin. Thank you for the opportunity to serve you and our community. And prior to taking office, Minnesota's unemployment rate was 6%. Today it's a healthy 3.8%. And back in the early 2000s, I was appointed to both state and federal interagency coordinating councils where I advised and assist the federal and state leaders in education, health, and other services to children and families. And in 2005, I was elected to the Anoka Hennepin School Board and served as its vice chair. I serve currently on the board of directors for the Midway Chamber Commerce, and in 2014, I was recognized as the Midway Chamber Volunteer of the Year. Education has been my passion and my life's work. And I have the local, state, and federal experience in this as well as an understanding in health and human services field. And one thing we did is we made historic investments in our schools, and we've seen positive results. We still have a lot more to do, and I humbly ask for your vote of confidence to continue and stand up for our communities.
All right, thank you. All right, question number 2. What are your qualifications for the office, and why are you seeking the office? Again, a 1-minute response. Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you. Prior to my election, I served a 3-year term under then Governor Tim Pawlenty on the State Interagency Council, as well as served on former Congressman Jim Ramstad's Education Advisory Committee. Since my election, I serve as the Vice Chair of Energy and Environment and Finance and in the policy committees, in both Health and Human Services and the Housing Committees, and the Education E12 Division on Finance and Policy. In this last session, over 75% of my bills were bipartisan. My business experiences in both the private and public sector. I co-founded 2 companies dedicated to consumer credit and financial management. I'm the marketing director of Ally People Solutions. I'm a graduate of St. Mary's University of Minnesota, and I had an advanced certificate in energy policy from the University of Idaho. My wife, Yvette, and I have a daughter who's a graduate of Champlin Park High School, and we live in Champlin, Minnesota. And I'm proud of the work that we've accomplished, and I hope to earn your vote.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Lundy.
Thank you. I think that, most importantly, been an active leader, mayor, the city. In my city of Brooklyn Park, we had 3 challenges One thing is we had crime, and I've been proud to say we've cut crime by a third. Why is that important? Because not one point did we ever talk about gun control as that solution. We talk about economic development. I say if you want to see a business card, go down 610, and you'll see what happens when you're intentful on what you want to get done, and you bring people together. One of the reasons I'm running, though, is a couple years ago, a group of daycare providers came to me and asked for my help. And they said that they were trying to get the state to take a look at the things that they were trying to do to daycare providers. They said they tried to get hearings. They tried to contact our state senator, and they didn't hear anything back. It was at that point I realized that one of our prime goals is to do things with people, not to people. It was at that point I really seriously considered running, and that's when I decided that it was time to take a voice to St. Paul that says we have important issues here that you need to work with us and stop passing legislation that deals with us.
All right, thank you. And question number 3, what one issue are you most passionate about, and what are your plans to address it? And Mr. Lundy, we'll have you first with a up to 2-minute response.
Okay, thank you. So my most passionate issue is probably one of my drivers for why I'm running is gridlock. This last session, we saw what happens when partisanship rules the day. We had a bonding bill that went nowhere, including a project in this city that didn't get funded because people thought the Southwest Light Rail was more important than our needs here. We had bonding bills throughout this district that were important, and they didn't happen. We had tax breaks for senior citizens, for people who are struggling to pay for college costs. Again, because the two parties couldn't get along, we suffer. I think that's wrong. My city is the most diverse city in the state. When I took over, we had 70% of the people believed in the future of that city. Now that percentage is 93. We did that by bringing people together, all different walks of life, people who spoke English, who don't speak English, people born here, people who weren't, people of different colors, faith, orientation. It didn't matter. What I have in the experience I will bring and the passion is that bringing people together is not just an election year slogan. It's not something you put on lit piece and you hand out and say how important it is that we work with people. It's about getting things done. And results is what I care about. We did not get a bonding bill this year. The transportation needs for the entire state of Minnesota fell victim to partisanship. We did not get the tax breaks and the things. When you have a surplus, by God, return it to the people who paid for it. I don't think that's too much to ask. It's our money, not theirs. I think the people who help make that surplus are the ones who deserve it. Put that money back into our community. But let business owners reinvest, hire new employees. Let families who are trying to struggle to pay for rising health care costs be able to pay for their bills. I think too often we sit there and we accept the partisanship. We think that it cannot change. I'm here to tell you that it can. If people go to St. Paul with the intent that I will work with people, I will work with anybody on any issue, on anything, because what I truly care more than anything is that we get results. We pass the bills that we're supposed to pass. We bring things back to the people that matter. And that's what I'll do as your state senator.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hoffman, what one issue are you most passionate about, and what are your plans to address it? Again, 2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm seeking re-election because I work hard to stand up for the values of and voters of Champlin, Brooklyn Park, and Coon Rapids, and have worked well together with city, county, and school leaders, as well as my colleagues regardless in the state, regardless of party. And we've accomplished great things in the past. And when you talk about where my passion is, it is first and always has been about education. And education is the one issue I hear most about. You know, families are concerned about schools and teacher quality, and businesses are concerned about growing and retaining a quality workforce in Minnesota. We must make it a priority to provide equitable funding and resources to schools in every part of the state. And let me add to that. Recently, the recent grads and parents, they're saddled with high student loan debt loads, and that's prohibiting them from fully contributing to our full economy. We must support strategies that make it easier for students to pay off the debt and so that they can begin participating in our economy. And another fact is we must maintain the balanced budget that the DFL has worked hard, very hard to create during the past 4 years. You know, Minnesota endured a decade of budget deficits of $1 billion, which caused increases in property taxes, and that skyrocketed. That did not allow us to invest in what was important in our state, and we cannot let that happen again. Last year, we saw the fastest income growth on record in Minnesota, but that doesn't include every population. We must fix the MA spend down problem and focus on targeted tax relief to help people overcome poverty, like our working family tax credit, and I will still work hard to reduce the college tuition and student debt to make it easier to access education and receive those job skills training that are desperately needed.
Okay, thank you. Now we will move to audience questions, and we have a lot of audience questions. I think we'll just start with, we'll just go ahead on into this. Question one, and it will be Mr. Hoffman that will answer it. The House passed with a supermajority a bonding bill last year that would have completed the Champlain Mill project, along with a lot of others. The Senate inserted a Southwest Light Rail amendment at 11:45 on the last day of the session, which killed the bipartisan omnibus bonding bill. The question is, please comment on that, on the bonding bill.
Absolutely, thank you. That's a great question, because last time I looked, there were 18 Senate Republicans that voted for the Senate bonding bill. And in the process, bonding bills must start in the House first. When we had gotten the bill and passed it and sent it back to the other body, there were 18 Republican senators that did it. So we can work in a bipartisan manner in the Senate. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here and speculate as to what happened to it, because there was still time at the end of the day, or I'm not going to play politics, but I'll guarantee you this. Those two bills that I had in the bonding bill, along with my other 78 bills that did pass into law this year, those two bills, we will make sure the first 30 days in session in January, we will get those passed, and they will still be taken care of. Alongside that, too, you talk about the Champlain Mill Pond. For the first time in the history of this city, I was able to, in a bipartisan manner, get $3.2 million to fix the dam, and then to add an additional $2 million from the Legislative Citizens Commission on Minnesota Resources. That bill in the LCCMR was dead twice. I brought it back, and at the end of the day, we were able to, again, in the first time in the history of this city, get money to the city for that mill pond.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Lundy?
Thank you. I think that, when you look at things like this as a prime example of when people decide that they'd rather pull away from the table rather than passing bills and getting things that we need done. You can't say that what happened was any kind of victory, but for partisans. When you sit there and you say that we're going to do things, but yet things don't get done, I believe that's called a failure. I don't know of any business that says, I tried to sell it, but I didn't get it. I tried to fix that person. I tried to heal that person. I tried to teach that person. And at the end of the day, what's the measurement? Did you get it done? And it didn't happen. I can rest assured this district will know that if I ever draw a political line in the sand, it's going to be in front of the district, not behind it. I will never sign a letter saying that I will support Southwest, or else I'll not support the bonding bill. I didn't see people from the Southwest line standing up and saying they were going to support the bonding bill so that the Mill Pond project could be completed, or projects in Coon Rapids. So these things happen for a reason. It's because people don't talk.
All right, thank you. All right, the next question is about energy. Kind of a two-parter. What will you do as a senator, to move Minnesota in a more sustainable direction for the future for clean energy? And as an aside, what is your position on the oil pipeline? And we will start with Mr. Lundy.
Yes. Let's do the pipeline first, because I think that's the most important. Newsflash. The oil is going to get from point A to point B. And so the pipeline would help that process happen. So I do support the pipeline, because right now it's just going to get routed through another state. We've done nothing to help the environment. If you believe that the pipeline was bad, it's just going to go through other states. And what's going to happen is jobs in our state are going to go unmet. People that would work on that project are not being employed. The oil is going to get there. I'd like to take the oil off the trains. If you want to give competition to those trains and make the trains and them stand up and respect when we ask them to do things, then give them some competition. If they know that their bottom line is being hurt by the fact that we're going to approve a oil pipeline, they're going to come to the table and start to address some of the things that affect other cities, especially Coon Rapids. And so I think that we need to be really mindful of the fact that we live in a vast ecosystem, that what we do here, just because we may say we're getting clean energy, doesn't mean it's coming from everywhere.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hoffman?
We've done a lot of work in sustainable clean energy, and there's some great leadership examples out there. You can start with Minnesota Power, that's pulling off a DC line what used to be coal energy and turning that into a savings up in the hydro in Manitoba. That's all going right here to Minnesota. Xcel Energy, for example, wants to shut down Sherco 1, 2, and 3, which are their 3 coal-producing plants, convert one of them to a natural gas, and then the other one they want to help sustain by putting 1,200 megawatts of wind energy that they have that's connected to Minnesota as well. There's some great efficiencies in doing that. There's some issues that revolving around regulation on how to get that to be able to move faster. I think we can get an avenue to that, and I know how to do that and have done that. When you look at the clean energy in Minnesota, we've led the way. We've got some great standards in place for 2030, and we even have some goals beyond that that are going to get us into 2040. And I think having a joint conversation about that, specifically when you look at, we have a real fragmented approach with lots of municipalities, but you know what? At the end of the day, we all want to do what's right for the ratepayer and also for the investor.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now, the next question relates to campaign finance disclosure. How would you reform the Senate rules to make the legislative process more open, and how would you make the state campaign finance laws that affect disclosure requirements for independent spending groups, how would you change that? Mr. Hoffman, excuse me.
Thank you. That's a great question, and that's something that we all deal with. Just so happens 4 years ago there was over $500,000 that was spent against me from independent expenditures. Actually, it was $387,000, but you know I was off by $100,000. But that money was dark money, and that anytime you have that dark money, what they're meaning there is it should be some accountability. I don't care what side of the aisle you're from, but if somebody's going to do an independent expenditure, they have to be accountable to the taxpayer. They have to be accountable to the citizens, because if they're spending 8 times what you as an individual are spending, you never, ever, ever can get to the truth on really what's happening. And so I absolutely believe that we need to have some really comprehensive reform in making sure that people are, number one, accountable to where that money's coming from and accountable to who they're going for or going against. And that's something I think we need to continually work on. And I sat on the last 4 years on the elections subcommittee, and those issues did come up, and we will keep bringing them up until we can get a fix for it. Because you know what? I'm just like you. We all want to know where it's all coming from.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Mr. Lundy?
Yeah, I think this is one issue that my opponent and I will definitely feel the effects of by the time election rolls around, because I think people are projecting this will be $1 million race by outside money who have decided that this is one of those battlegrounds that neither my opponent nor I will have much say, if any at all, on what is going on in that regards. I do believe in instant transparency. I believe that in this computer age we can find out any information instantly. I have no problem to require people to have to instantly report within 24 hours what they're doing. I think that would at least allow people to know, especially at those last 3 days when the carpet bombing begins of the mass mailings, that people can look it up right then and there and find out. I don't think that's too much to ask. If people can figure it out, they've planned it out, they can let us know where that money's coming from and what the spending is. I have no problem with making it more transparent. I think people should have the right to know where it's coming from, who's spending it, and I think that would be good for all of us.
Mm-hmm. All right, okay, thank you. Next question. With other states legalizing marijuana, we now have models to look at. Would you recognize the other states' models as positive or negative, and if so, why? And if you feel positive, that they are positive, what would you follow their lead on legalizing marijuana? And Mr. Lundy, we would go with you first.
Yeah, I think the jury is still out. I mean, we look at Colorado and what's happening. The states around Colorado are seeing an increase in trafficking because people go to Colorado, buy marijuana. They'll go to 7, 8, 20 different dispensaries, and they will buy their allotted amount, and then they'll take it back to their state and sell it there. I don't think we have a good study. I think there's a study by the Department of Justice that's going to take a look at that and the effects of it. I think until we have that kind of information, I'm quite happy to let someone else lead. I like to make judgments based off of facts and research. I don't think we know exactly yet the effects of full legalization. I'd like to see what happens in Colorado, I believe parts of Oregon, and study that take a look at it, and then make some decisions on what's good for us. Just because other states do it doesn't mean it's the right thing for us to do, but I do think it's an important issue to take a look at.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, Mr. Hoffman?
Thank you. Having served on the Health, Human Services, and Housing Policy, one of the first stops any kind of legislation like this would occur before it goes to public safety or to judiciary is through Health and Human Services. And we did. We had multiple conversations about especially the benefits, the medicinal benefits of marijuana. And actually, because of our judicious work, we've expanded that role. One of the things that came out in the 2.5 years of having these discussions was the regulation side of it. And what we heard from our law enforcement folks was, okay, if you do this, but how are you going to regulate where it's coming from and what's going? So that's a question that still needs to be debated and discussed about how it's done. And absolutely, some other states have figured it out. In Colorado, one, but that's now just become a cash industry out in Colorado. And the piece with that is you still have a federal earhole to look through, which is the ATF, and seeing that is going to be something that we're going to have to address. But you know what? We keep the conversation going, and yes, there are some pivotal states that have done some really good things that can address the thing about regulation. That's important.
Okay, all right, thank you. Next question. What is your stance on for-profit prisons? And Mr. Hoffman, we will start with you.
It also came up in our Health and Human Services conversation because when you look at 40% of the prison population are going to be people that have some kind of developmental disability, and specifically looking at some mental health concerns, when you start to dissolve some of the public entities that are there, you're going to get into a situation that's not going to be benefit to both the individual or community at large. Latest reports that we've seen, there's not been good oversight on the private prison industry, and yet folks would say, well, if you made it public employees and yet let it be privately owned, yet we find that there are too many examples of where that system fails to protect the institutional rights of those people that work there. Instead of having a ratio of maybe 100 to 1, you might have a ratio of 1,000 to 1, and sometimes that can be not well attended for those people that want to do the public safety side of it, especially for those folks that are working there. And if we're supposed to also provide some level of care to individuals, if you're not having the public entity involved in that, because most of those folks that are in there are going to be some kind of medical assistance or Medicare assistance, that's going to be something that we're going to have to address.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Lundy?
Yes, I don't support private prisons because I think that when you take someone's liberty away, when you let them not take part in society, that is an important thing. That's a role that only government should have the right to do, and I don't think outsourcing it is the proper way to do it. I think that is an important thing, that when you incarcerate somebody for whatever it may be, that it is a serious offense. And that it shouldn't be taken lightly. I also believe that the real goal of prison should be rehabilitation. There are some people who will never be rehabilitated and frankly shouldn't see the light of day. But there are many people who, if they were given a chance, and I don't know that a for-profit prison would have much incentive to rehabilitation. They would probably get paid based off of how many people they have. And I think that's the wrong incentive for the goals that won't be met.
Okay, thank you. All right, the next question is about education. The opportunity gap between low-income and affluent students starts with pre-kindergarten. Evidence is showing that full-day preschool programs help and close the opportunity gap. What steps should the legislature take to ensure every child has access to a high-quality preschool education? And we will start with you, Mr. Lundy.
Yeah, I think first of all, stop declaring war in the daycare industry. The state senate did nothing but proposal after proposal about affecting their business. I'm proud to be one of the founding mayors for the President Obama's My Brother's Keeper program, and that program is to look at the opportunity gaps for young males of color, specifically Latino and African American. And we look at it every age level at which a kid starts to fall behind, and we look at the reasons why this happens. And this is one of those things as mayor that I've worked closely on. At a certain point in my life, I decided to go upon a career change, and I actually went from a six-figure job to a $14 an hour job working for Evergreen Park in Nokohenipan School District, which is a high poverty school. I did it because I wanted to see firsthand what was going on inside those schools who are experiencing that. And what I saw was not an answer that either Republicans or Democrats were even choosing to address. I saw things that, frankly, both parties are missing on this. And so what I would like to work on is the root cause. I'd like to invest in that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Hoffman?
We've had two school districts right here in Senate District 36 that have truly addressed the opportunity gaps within those individuals that would be within poverty. And starting with our compensatory education model project that I've been proud to be a sponsor of, and we've shown through the good data that's there that we do close the achievement gap. The other thing is when you start in the preschool model, it's a flexible parent-aware project that allows daycare providers. It's flexible. We're not shutting anybody out. And with that model, what we've shown with a triangular relationship, you got, like, for example, in Coon Rapids, New Horizons works jointly with Early Head Start and Head Start, which is federal dollars and state dollars, along with the Nokohenipan School District. And the results from that trifecta relationship are amazing. Not only were youth ready to start kindergarten, but they moved the benchmarks in first, second, and third grade as they moved on. And these were children at risk because of poverty and or other factors that were there. And so the data's there. I've brought it 3 years ago. I brought it last year, and I'm going to bring it again. The statewide fix for this is compensatory education model that's based upon not somebody's zip code, but on the fact of what the factors are that they need, and it is poverty first.
Okay, thank you. Next question is about insurance. What should the legislature do to improve MNsure? And Mr. Hoffman, we'll go with you first.
That's the $1 million question, or was that the $64,000 question that was there? You know, when you look at MNsure is just an avenue for somebody to get into the exchange, and that's where it gets really complicated. And the exchange, however, when you talk about those people that are in the MNsure product, is 5% of the population of the 95% of people that we have in Minnesota that have complete access right now to health insurance. And so I think we can target that 5% and find a fix to it. I know the governor is now going to but he's going to bring back the healthcare task force that actually looked at MNsure from the very beginning. But I want to go back to Minnesota has some great tradition with its MNsure programs that have been around, actually Minnesota Care, and the fact that we do have 95% of the folks in Minnesota do have access. Two things that need to change. Spend down provision within elderly waivered services and the spend down provision of people with disabilities that have to spend down in order to maintain those health care benefits. That's wrong, that's discriminatory, and I still want to fix that when I come back.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Lundy?
Start over, and not with the same people that designed MNsure to begin with, because it has not met its goals. If the MNsure was a private corporation, the Attorney General of Minnesota would have a press conference this afternoon to bring charges against it because of their mismanagement of the system. Time and time again, they've shown that they are simply unable and unable to help people. I think the larger question is healthcare costs. Things continue to rise. For people confuse access with affordability. Last year, my family, as I was going through my career change, we paid for our own insurance. I paid $600 a month. It went up to $830 a month for our family. You know what it covered? Absolutely nothing. That's the real problem here, is the fact that you can have insurance and you can get nothing for it. We never used it because it was cheaper for me to go to a doctor and say, how much would it cost if I paid it out of my pocket versus how much if I used my insurance? It was always cheaper for us to use our money. So we gave $7,200 last year to insurance companies for nothing. That is the real crisis that's affecting our state.
All right, thank you. All right, we have time for just one last quick question, and that will, Mr. Lundy will have you answer first, and that is, tell us about one of your biggest non-political interests.
And that'll happen on Wednesday, November 9th, I think it is. The day after the election is when I'll reacquaint that. It's my sons. And so I love every aspect of their lives. I'm blessed that I'm now teaching at Hempen Tech. I'm no longer on a plane. And so it affords me the opportunity to see them go to school in the morning. I get to be around most days. suffer through the frustrations as my sons tackle homework, and there's nothing more that I love better. People who know me know that I have 910,000 flyer miles, earned the hard way on a plane, and I willingly gave it up in that career change because my sons are really important to me, and I consider it a blessing that I get to see them go to school every day and see them come home.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. Hoffman?
Spending time with my family, definitely, and how do you follow that? It's amazing. One of the things, though, that I truly enjoy doing is I'm a drummer, and I've helped raise thousands of dollars for nonprofits and thousands of dollars for homeless youth activities just right over in Anoka County, and proud to be part of that and proud to be doing that. I absolutely will set my Gretsch kit up on November 9th, and I will play for 10 hours, and then that'll get my chops back. But that's supposed to be funny. Now, my wife said I'm not funny, don't try to be funny, but in all sincerity, there are friends of my wife here that are listening to this, and Yvette, we're going to go on a trip, and we're going to relax and shut the cell phones off.
Okay, all right, well, thank you. Now, we'll have a 1-minute closing statement from each candidate, and Mr. Hoffman, we will start with you.
Thank you. You know, it's been 4 years since you elected me to the Minnesota Senate, and I sincerely thank you for the opportunity to serve our community. The North Metro area has seen a flurry of new business and expansion, and I'm proud to have supported smart policies and funding to help bring stability and growth to our community. You know, as a member of the Senate Education Committee, we've made historic investments, and we've seen positive results. Our high school graduation rate is the highest it's been in a decade, and thousands more preschool children have access and parental choice to high-quality learning opportunities, and we continue to make steady progress in closing the achievement gap. Together, we have worked to secure funding for transportation projects like Highway 610 and Highway 10, and this type of investment is really significant the economic growth and jobs in the North Metro area. And just last year, the Minnesota Secretary of State's office said there's been 800 new business starts in Senate District 36 alone. It's been an honor to serve you, the people of Senate District 36, Coon Rapids, Champlin, and Brooklyn Park for the last 4 years. I hope you will check out my accomplishments and learn what I have to offer more. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. All right, Mr. Lundy?
First, I'd like to thank everybody for hosting this forum. It's an opportunity for us to get a chance to share our views and people to hear us directly. I'm seeking this office because I believe that what we need in St. Paul is more about people who understand how to work with others. All the great ideas that you can have, all the great programs, the proposals, all the bills that you can introduce, if they're not getting passed, then there's really nothing getting done. And so I think we've seen all too often what happens during election year, people coming back and saying that they're going to work with people. My whole career as mayor of the largest, most diverse city in the state has been about pulling people together. People from different walks of life, people different origins, different cultures, different languages, and we're united by the one thing that if we can work together, great things can happen. And I know that if we take that message to St. Paul and you send individuals who understand how that works to actually talk and listen to people, that you might get things through, you might get things done, and we might be able to affect some of the changes and challenges we have in our state. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you very much.